I love the speed of the game. I love the skill of the game. I think it's as entertaining as it's ever been. I hate the video reviews.
James Duthie, welcome to Behind the Glass. Thanks so much for doing this. We chatted 5 years ago, so that was awesome. And now we're back. So thank you. This is great.
Pleasure to be back with you on another podcast, a different one, but glad to know you're still doing them, Vince.
Yeah, different one. So I guess 5 years ago we connected on another podcast. So in these 5 years, James, what was new? What's happening?
Well, with my life, it's funny when you have a TV job, because kind of like when I have these conversations with people, I'm the one who should be asking you what's new. And I know you've got a bunch of new things, because my thing never changes. I'm still talking about the Leafs power play and things like that. But no, things are great, really. I still have, like, had my dream job basically for 25 years now, and as long as they'll have me, I'll keep doing it. I still do a bunch of hockey and still do the Masters and the Super Bowl. This has been a really fun year, because I was lucky enough to be part of the Olympic coverage over on CBC, and then doing the World Cup on TSN and CTV this summer. Yeah, I think 2026 is going to be one I remember for a long time.
It was my childhood, James, because I was watching the Olympics. I saw Ron McLean, who obviously I grew up with and watching Hockey Night Canada, and he threw it to you on the panel. It was so exciting.
That was weird. I think it was weird for both Ron and I. Same with me. Obviously, I grew up watching Hockey Night in Canada, and I've known Ron for a long time, but I guess I never thought, just because we sort of do the same thing at different networks, that we'd ever do it together, so to speak. So that was a really cool, the whole thing was a very cool moment. I think it was weird for the viewer. I'm sure you probably found it that way. I'm sure the first couple of games to tune in and see, me and Elliot and Bieksa, with Cassie and Cheryl was very strange, but it was a lot of fun for me. Always loved the Olympics. You probably asked me this 5 years ago, Vince, like my favorite moments, and I always say 2010 and the gold medal game. Oh, to have a chance to be there again. And it's funny, I think I said this on the air, when 2010 happened, I said, I don't think it'll ever feel as big again. And this didn't feel quite as big, but in the moment, it felt almost as big. And I don't know if you felt the same for you watching. Like that gold medal game was crazy, and it was disappointing the way it ended, obviously. But that's the best hockey I've ever seen. Certainly watched that tournament. I've never seen. We knew it from their first game was against Czechia, and from the first shift, I said, I have not seen the game played at this level, this speed. It was incredible.
Amazing. For the chemistry, James, on the panel, was it hard because people were coming from different networks? Was it easy to build chemistry with everybody?
Yeah. I mean, I never like to speak for the viewer, so they might say no. I don't know. I felt it was great, because I know those guys too, right? I've played golf a lot with Elliot and BX. So I don't think it was like two strangers coming together, and, they work with each other. And when you're the host, you're trying to get out of the way as much as possible and just ask questions and let the panelists do their things. So I thought it was totally fine. I felt comfortable. I just wish, sometimes we had more time. It's tough when you're doing it in the Olympics. It's even more compressed. It's hard enough when you're doing an NHL intermission, but in the Olympics, because there's other stuff going on, sometimes you only have 3 or 4 minutes to do a chat. And when we had at times 5 people on the panel, it's hard for everybody to get a voice in.
Right. James, I really want to talk to you, like, your career evolution and media landscape. But since we're talking about the Olympics, like, how do you think media has changed in the last couple of years? Wrong question.
Yeah. Well, I don't think for what I do, I don't think I did very much different from 2010 to 2026. I'm still sitting on a panel in the rink doing intermissions and a pregame. But if I was to take a step back, all of media, certainly it's so different with streaming. And 2010, I'm trying to think, was Twitter, I don't think was a thing. I can remember, at the 2011 World Juniors, Bob McKenzie showing me his phone and saying, I'm on this new thing called Twitter. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. He said, no, you should do it. It's cool. So I signed up for it. And so I completely remember that moment. So I guess that was the year before. So yeah, obviously, I think social media is the biggest change that that so many things happen and news breaks through that more often than anything else. But as far as my job, it really hasn't changed that much. We sit and talk sports, and in this case, the Olympics, we talk hockey, and hopefully that'll never change. I think there's always a need to tell stories and do those things. As long as they put a camera in front of you, there'll probably be robotic cameras. There'll probably be robotic hosts in about 10 years. I'll hang on as long as I can, Vince.
How about the evolution, James? You guys, I guess you talked about it with all the different events from this past year, but has your role evolved at all?
Well, the biggest change for me happened in 2012 or 14 when we lost the national rights. And I'd been just a hockey guy for the last 7 or 8 years. It kind of ended up being a blessing personally for me because I love hockey, but I've always wanted to do other sports. I envy the guys like the Bob Costas and the Mike Tiricos and such who did or do multiple sports. And so that gave me a chance. I did a little bit less hockey, but got to do the Masters and the Super Bowl and the Grey Cup and have other opportunities like that. So that was the biggest change for me. Since then, my job's been essentially the same. Obviously, I would mention this is a weird year with the World Cup and the Olympics and everything else. But, generally there is a wonderful sameness to my job. I say this because, I know some people might hate their jobs because it's the same routine every day. I love it. I love that I'm at the Masters every April. I love that on Christmas Day, I kiss my kids goodbye and go to the World Juniors. So there's a routine to that, but it's like the best kind of routine because I'm so lucky to cover all those things.
Yeah. I remember, James, 5 years ago, I asked you a question if each event is different. And then I think your response was, I've never been asked that before. And in that moment, I actually got more confidence in broadcasting because of you. So that was a big win.
That's a good question. I don't know if I gave you a good answer back then, but it's a good question. I don't know what I probably said. It is different, but there is the same. When you're a host, it's cool for me because I get to work with all these different panelists. Right? I'll go to the Super Bowl and work with Luke Wilson and Davis Sanchez, and they bring a different energy. And then on the panel, I work with the Jeff O'Neills and the Darren Dragers and such. And to have an experience like the Olympics where you go working with completely different people. At the World Cup, I'll work with the soccer guys this summer, and that's for me is super fun because in essence, my role is the same, is just to try to get the most out of them and try to ask the questions that people at home would be thinking in their heads, hopefully. But yeah, that's the funnest part for me is the different mix in personalities and watching all the different, they're so different, right? They're the same in a sense, but hockey guys are different than soccer guys who are different from football guys. And that's always really cool for me.
I asked Danielle Bain from TSN, James, this question. But what do fans don't see that you see?
You mean as far as watching the games or as far as what we do?
What you do, yeah.
Well, I think what they don't see is that you do is like a job there is more preparation than you think. I think especially on a panel, the idea is to make it look like we're just having an off the cuff conversation, which a lot of the time it is. But I think that you have to do the same sort of preparation you would have in every job to be prepared for that off the cuff conversation, right? So let's just take a typical, let's say a Leafs night where I'm doing a Leafs game. I'll spend, a couple hours sort of trying to read everything about the two teams, all the latest stuff, maybe watching stuff from old games, recent games, if I haven't, just to refresh my memory. And then, I'll have the producer will work all day on putting together a lineup for the show. I'll spend a couple hours going through that lineup, thinking about what I might say here, what question I might ask there. A lot of the panelists might have already given topics. Hey, I want to talk about, Austin Matthews' goal scoring struggles or whatever. And so I'll try to weave the show together in my head and think in advance of, okay, if he says this, what I might say here sort of thing, and have things to say to commercial break and such. It's a weird job, but I think that people probably think we just go on and do it, which is true to an extent, but obviously there's got to be preparation involved in that. So you're ready and hopefully at least somewhat knowledgeable.
Yeah. I feel lost, James, if I don't prepare for a podcast episode or even going to a practice with the goalies.
The only people ask me, Vince, if I get nervous on TV. The only times I've ever gotten, for certainly early in my career I did, but the only times I get nervous now would be if I'm not prepared for something, which never happens unless you get thrust into something surprising at the last second, I suppose it could be. But that's the only time if I feel like I haven't really once in a while, I guess I will, be doing one event and have to go right to another event and feel like I haven't had as much time as I wanted to, because I think I think that's the key to everything in life as far as work wise, is to be prepared. And when you're prepared, then you know that nothing's going to catch you off guard, and then you can just relax and do your job. And you end up not using 90%. The Olympics is a great example. When you prepare for an Olympic Games, especially if you're hosting everything, not just hockey, man, it's like studying for law exams, right? I would have like a binder this thick of notes, and you only end up using 1% of that, but you have to have all the 99 other percent just in case, right? So
For the trade deadline, James, every time I watch you, I just think it's because you're on the air like basically all day for 8 or 9 hours, right? And then when you're interviewing different players or going to the different analysts in different cities, you know it all. It's amazing, right? But it's just so much preparation that goes into
funny.
that.
I don't. I'll tell you a couple of stories, Vince, of why I don't. You're right. And then, the preparation for that, people ask me how I prepare for Trade Center. That's one that I don't really do. Besides going through all the teams in my head and thinking about who the free agents are and who might get traded and just reading as much as possible, I think your preparation is just following hockey all year long, right? And knowing who all the guys are and listening to the insiders and what they might say. But there are definitely times, I don't pretend to know every detail about, fourth liner on the St. Louis Blues or whatever. And there'll be times where a guy will get traded and I'll be like, okay, I know that name, but I don't really know that guy that well, especially prospects, maybe, right? And so I really depend on the guys, guys like Mike Johnson are super knowledgeable, and Craig Button and Cheryl Pounder, and obviously the insider guys. So there'll be times once in a while where I don't know too much about a guy, and I'll kind of have to depend on the analyst. That's the one good thing as a host, is you can always go, so what do you think of that guy?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Who do you think, James, was the best interview you've ever done in your career, or maybe the most challenging, if you could reveal?
It's another great question, Vince.
Thank you.
The best interview I've ever done. I don't know. I don't know, because it's hard to judge, what I might think was a really good interview, might not be for others. I just try to think of some. We used to be challenging to interview Brian Burke, because now this was a kind of a gag. He would always just give me one-word answers. Now, I knew Berkey really well, and so he was doing it as a joke, but nobody at home thought it was a joke, because he would just be stone-faced and he would just say, no, yes, no. And so everybody thought we hated each other when we really didn't. We'd like go for beers after. But it was still a challenge for me, because I'd have to fill 3 minutes with 48 questions because he only gave me one-word answers. I suppose I've probably had tougher ones with people that really weren't happy, but nothing that really sticks out. Once in a while, I've had a couple of athletes that weren't great, but for the most part, guys are accommodating. Sports is a happy place. I had more trouble when I was a news reporter before I did sports, because in news, it's a lot more negative, and so people aren't always happy to see you. I don't really have, I'm sure there's one I should be proud of that should be I'll tell you a story. It's not necessarily the interview was very good, but one of the interview I probably worked hardest to get was Tiger Woods at the 2005 Open Championship at St. Andrews, Scotland. And we were there covering that event, and TSN had never gotten a one-on-one with Tiger Woods. And so as soon as I found that out, I was determined that was my goal this week, was to get a one-on-one with Tiger Woods. And so I knew who his agent was, and I saw his agent following him behind him one day, maybe a practice round or something. And so I cozied up to his agent, and Tiger had done something with TSN about 6 months ago. He'd come up to Canada to do something. And so I said I was from TSN, and, we'd done a show with Tiger, and he said, oh, yeah, I remember. And I said, I'd really love to get a one-on-one with Tiger this week if he wins. And he's like, yeah, I could tell he was skeptical, but every day I would see him, I would go get some FaceTime with him to remind him who I was, and just say, hey, I'd love to get that one-on-one with Tiger. I'd love to get that one-on-one with Tiger. So Tiger ends up winning the Open Championship. And I found out where the interviews were going to be, because the only people who were going to get one-on-ones was ABC, who was doing the tournament, and I think the BBC over there in Europe. And it was like a big portable put up, a temporary building. And I stood outside, and I remember the British security guys were saying, get lost, right? They're saying, what are you doing here? You're not going to get an interview, get lost. And I said, I'm just going to stay here. And then Tiger finally arrives, and and the agent's with him. And I said, "Hey," and he goes, "Come on in." So that's how I got my one-on-one with Tiger. So
That's so cool.
yeah.
That's amazing. Tiger Woods is, yeah,
Yeah, it was
big
pretty
deal.
cool. Like, it was only a 3-question interview. It probably wasn't the best interview ever, but it was cool to finally get that.
No, that's so cool. About Berkey, James. So it's funny. This is like a weird story from my childhood, but basically, so I went to camp. We would do camping with my friends, and our dads would come, and like high school, elementary school, and we would go camping every year. And I think that weekend, Ryan Burke was hired, and I was debating with one of my friends' dads. I'm like, "Oh, Berkey's gonna fix the leaves. Berkey's gonna fix the leaves." And then so the whole weekend, everybody was screaming Berkey. When I was like, we would play golf the next day, and the that would be like Berkey. So it was quite funny. Obviously,
Yeah.
but it's
Well,
super cool.
another interview I was really proud of. Berkey's son Brendan came out as gay, and because I knew Berkey well, he chose to do his first interview with us because he was I think a hockey manager with a university team in the States, and it was rare in that time that hockey players would come out like that. And so we did a pretty emotional interview with him and his dad, and he sadly passed away, like I think a year later in a car accident. But that was one, that was very, not your typical interview in my day-to-day jobs. I was very proud of that, and proud that family, had trust in me to do that interview right.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch that interview. I think it'd be awesome. It'd be really cool. Can I ask you, James, about the NHL and what you think of the current state of the NHL? Where do you think the league is as a whole in terms of like playing styles? Are you enjoying watching still?
Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah.
I started hosting at TSN back in the sort of the end of the clutch and grab days. And, coming out of the lockout in 05 when the game sort of changed and Crosby and Ovechkin came in. And I really think it's only gotten better. I'm going to add a caveat at the end. I love the speed of the game. I love the skill of the game. I think it's as entertaining as it's ever been. I hate the video reviews, and I will take some culpability here because back when that all happened, I kind of thought it was a good idea. And I probably said it on TV a couple of times. I love this idea of a coach's challenge, right? Because we were only thinking in terms of the egregious calls. This all goes back to, I don't know if you remember this, but Matt Duchene was offside by 8 feet and scored a key goal in the game. And that's what prompted it all. And I think we were all caught up in, well, that can't happen. Like, it makes the league look bush league when that happens. So, get a coach's challenge and we'll eliminate those things. And man, I guess never envisioned, and should have envisioned, but never envisioned that it would come down to, millimeters, or whether escape blades on the ice, or whether, we saw in the Ottawa Carolina series, whether Jordan Staal had control of the puck, and the semantics involved, I think, are crazy. So that drives me nuts. The goalie interference, which is kind of your department, I still really don't know what it is. And I don't think half the people know what it is sometimes. So those are the two things that bother me. I wish we could go back and just eliminate video review, or I wish they could really get together and think about some way to, I don't know, if you don't challenge in the first 10 seconds after, if it's not blatantly obvious, then, you can't challenge or you get a penalty or whatever, because these sort of 6-minute reviews to take away goals are driving me nuts. Besides that, I think the game's awesome.
And I totally agree, James. It's the time. That's my thing. The time with video review, like 6 minutes, 10 minutes. And the funny thing is sometimes they don't even go to commercial, right? They just like, you're basically watching the players skating around and the referee. Yeah, it's just, it doesn't make any sense. It needs to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the one thing pretty much everybody in hockey's on board with, but it's tough to put, it's tough to put that back in the can sort of thing. Like, because, you have the technology and everything. The league's is in a tough spot now with that. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's like technology is at a place where it's getting too quickly in the game. It hasn't really evolved to it.
Yeah. And if you go back now and you say no video review on, let's say, offsides, and then, some guy's 2 feet offside and scores a Stanley Cup winning goal, then we all go, why would you not do that when you have the technology? So it's really tricky.
Another tricky question, James, is there any teams that you like watching?
Well, am I a fan of anybody? I mean, I get accused of being an Ottawa fan because I'm from Ottawa, but I don't really care. And that's truth. The job sucks the fan out of you to a great extent, and you end up cheering for people that you like. And for me, I cheer for storylines. I mean, I'd like all the Canadian teams to go through simply because it makes it more interesting for us. I'm a little worried about this year, but yeah, I love good stories, right? And, underdogs, whatever, or people that I've covered their entire careers. Anze Kopitar just retired. One of my favorite guys ever. I met him, I think he was at his draft or at maybe like the rookie all-star game the next year when they used to have those rookie games, and just was such a nice kid. And so I got to know him. He did a couple of silly spoofs with me that are still on YouTube somewhere. If you look up TSN panel Hangover, we did like this mock of the Hangover movie and Kobe was starting it for me. And so guys like that I've just been a fan of for so long, not only the way he played, but just a really good guy, right? And there's a lot of them still in hockey. And so the guys like that I cheer for as much as anything.
I feel like when Crosby and Ovechkin, James, finally call it and they retire, it's going to be a sad day.
It will be. Yeah, it will be. Sid's probably, like, I love watching and covering Ovi as well, but Sid's probably my favorite player I've ever covered. I think he's just the classiest guy out there. So
Captain Canada. Yeah. Can we talk about your books, James? Because I really like them.
Oh,
I know
thanks.
you said off air to not talk about, but I want to bring them
No,
up.
I didn't say you did. Vince, I did so many pods back in the fall when I was pushing the books, and I thought everybody was kind of sick of me talking about it. It's a weird thing when you write a book because I'm proud of it. I want people to read it, but I'm not really good at like the salesman plugging thing. And so when you'll end up doing all these podcasts and TV appearances and they all end up out at the same time. And I feel like people are there was one week where I was on Spit and Chicklets and then I was on like 3 other pods and everybody, puts out clips and such. Right. And I was so sick of seeing my face. People must be sick of me. But yeah, thank you. The books are super fun. Despite all of this, I love doing them.
That's so funny. I don't think anybody would be sick of you, James. You're like a legend.
I don't know about that.
I wanted to ask, who's a beauty that doesn't get enough credit?
Who's a beauty that doesn't, just as far as hockey goes?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Well, it's a tough one to go around the league like that. Kopi's a great example. I would have probably said him if we just didn't have that conversation, because as much as he's a Hall of Famer, I don't think that necessarily he's gotten, the love throughout his career that, some of the top superstars in the league have gotten. I'm trying to look through. Well, I would say anybody on Carolina right now, the way they played in the first round, and I was guilty of that. I thought the Sens were going to be battle tested the way they played down the stretch, and I picked them to win. And as soon as I saw Carolina almost in game 1, I'm like, oh, that was a mistake. That was a team that I don't know, people sleep on them. I don't think they're, they kind of cruise to the division title. And so everybody thinks about how they always get pumped in the conference final. And I think they really got overlooked this year. They play a ridiculous brand of hockey. That's one of the most aggressive penalty kills I've ever seen. And they do it so well. So that entire team could fall into your category. I could probably come up with a bunch of other names, but I think that's the great thing about hockey is there's a lot of guys that are underappreciated, but don't care about that. Right. It's, having covered all the sports, it's one of the things I love about hockey is that guys are truly in it for team and not themselves.
Right. Who do you think, James, has the funniest personality?
Currently, I don't know. I used to, Luongo's always been my favorite, right? We did a whole bunch of skits together and he was just so dry funny. And I think people I always knew he was funny, but he never really showed it. And then he got his Twitter account there, Strombone1, and showed how funny he was. I don't know I obviously love Biz, and I think he's great. As far as current players go, I don't know. I can't think of a guy off the top of my head who really cracks me up, which is sad. I know there's the problem, and one of the things from the books you learn is, guys sometimes only feel free to really let loose with the media when their career is over. And that's when they tell you the best stories and such, right? But God, I have to pick up beauties and my favorite stories from the current players. Where I tell you, one guy who's really funny, underrated funny, is Mackenzie Weegar. He's a funny guy. Again, probably people don't know that, but good defenseman, very funny guy.
I know, James, like the Kachucks, because they have a podcast, the Kachuk brothers, and I guess I think it's either, well, if you read online, it's either you hate them or you love them, but I think they're so good for the game. It just adds a little bit more excitement.
I do too.
I don't know.
Yeah, I do too. And, they both gave me great stories for my book. I think they're great characters. I think Canadians are a little sour at them and sour at a lot of the American players because we lost them and everything, the way they celebrated. Personally, I feel you can, you win a gold medal, you can celebrate however you want.
Yeah. For sure. Can I ask, because I'm a goalie coach, James, and you
Yeah,
said
I know.
Luongo's my favorite goalie of all time. I said this in a previous podcast. I love Luongo. It'd be a dream to interview him one day and talk to him. But in terms of goaltending, James, like who do you think is like your favorite goalie right now and why?
Let me think. My favorite is different from like who is the best per se. I mean, that's a good question. I'm not the goalie lover the way you are. So it's a little bit different for me. I mean, Vasilevsky. I really like watching Bobrovsky. He was never my favorite goalie, but I love the story arc of how, when he first signed with Florida, it looked like a bust and he looked like his career was almost over. And then to play the way he played the last 3 playoffs is pretty freaking remarkable. So, yeah, I like I said, there's not a goalie since Luongo left the league. There's not a goalie who's like my favorite. All the guys like Luongo and Corey Schneider were my 2 favorite because they were my 2 favorite people when they were playing. And, all the guys, goalies do make the best characters because they end up making the best analysts. Like I love working with Jamie McLennan, Noodles, and I used to love working with Darren Pang when I got to work with him. So, and Panger is a great one because Panger is like 5'5", and I think weighed about 135 pounds and played in the NHL. Like, I don't care that he, only played in whatever games. That pound for pound, he might be one of the best athletes ever. To consider you played in the NHL with a time when the equipment was small and you're like 5'5", that's nuts. That guy, the amount of talent that guy had to play in the league at that size is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's a brilliant analyst too. Every time
Yeah, it is. And you'll never see that again. You're never going to see a goalie that small ever again, like playing the National Hockey League.
Yeah. I nerd out, James, because of the TSN trade deadline and stuff, and they have the goalie panel of Gino and McLennan, and I think Marty Baron was on it too. Like
Marty's awesome too. He's great. He's such a good dude.
Oh, it's super cool. I guess a final segment, James, because I don't want to take too much of your time. It's been a long day for you. Yeah, we don't have to talk about it on air, but so basically it's the final segment is quick hits, just 5 questions. The first thing that comes to mind. I'll try to ask questions that we haven't talked about already. So the first one is the best hockey arena that you've been to.
Montreal,
the
Bell Center. Yeah, just atmosphere, everything. Unbelievable.
Best road city.
Nashville. Just everything so compact, great food, like a 6-block bar area. I think they should have the All-Star game there every year.
Best dressed in hockey media.
Best dressed in hockey media. I got to pick somebody from TSN.
I think that'd be fair.
Yeah, but nobody on the panel really sticks out to me right now, so maybe I'm going to have to cross over. Kevin Weeks wears some pretty cool suits over when he's on NHL Network. Who's our best dressed guy? O-Dog would say it's him. I say no. Drag, definitely no. He has some bad matches because he's like from Saskatchewan or wherever. Like Johnson, pretty good suit. Noodles, no. God, I'm gonna have to say me on the panel.
I think so. That's amazing. Last one, James. Morning show or night show?
Which would I rather do?
Yeah,
always night. I can't do mornings. When I have to do like those morning shows, like publicizing my book or whatever, I'm a miserable failure. My whole life's been working in the evenings when games are on, so that's what I like.
I'm going to ask 2 more. Playoffs or trade deadline?
Playoffs. No, they're longer. Trade deadline's only one day, but playoffs any day.
Any day. And last one, James, 1 word to describe your career.
Lucky, dream, all those things. Like I said, Vince, I don't know if I said it in the last time we talked 5 years ago, but when I was growing up in Ottawa, I know it's rapid fire. It's supposed to be rapid fire answer, but I never, I just wanted to be like the local sportscaster covering the Ottawa 67s junior team and the Ottawa Rough Riders at the time football team. I never dreamt that I could cover Stanley Cup finals and Olympic games and Super Bowls and things like that. So I just feel ridiculously lucky that I keep getting to do what I'm doing.
I can't wait to see you, James, for years and years and years to come. It's going to be awesome.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on and best of luck with everything you're doing.
Thanks, James. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. Anytime for you, okay? So happy to come on again sometime. Thanks, Vince.
Yeah. If you enjoyed the conversation, please subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with your friends. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next episode.